Welcome back, Malifaux players, and today we have a battlefield set up for you. The purpose of today's video is to go through what a typical turn could look like for one of your crews. And what we're going to do is going to use the Seamus crew from the Reses. We're going to use the new reworked Lucius. As between these, we will be able to cover summoning, we'll be able to cover interacting, we'll be able to cover upgrades, and how some of these interactions and things work. We are basically playing a turn 2 or turn 3 where things have got close to each other and we have a mess in the middle to go. In today's crew, we have Seamus 2, aka Sebastian Baker. We have a dead Doxy. We have the White Rabbit Company. We have Madame Sibel, and we have a dead Dandy. And Bete Noire. We can't forget Bete Noire. On Lucius's side, we have Lucius 1. We have the Scribe, which is his totem. Noticing that Seamus' totem is not present. We have the Doppelganger, we have Agent 46, and we have an Investigator. So, in our little mini round battle today, we are going to be playing a modified version of Stuff the Ballots. Stuff the Ballots is where you have to interact with a ballot marker in the middle, and the person with the most of them at the end of the turn scores that one. You can have a maximum of 6, and typically there'd be 7, but for the purpose of today's explanation, we are just going to have 1. As I've said previously, we've got a couple of corpse markers and scrap markers to represent potentially killed models, and Lucius's crew has put down 2 schemes. These are done in a previous turn as part of the interaction. Now, what we're going to do is going to start with our start of turn sequences. So at the start of every turn, you will take your fate deck and you will draw some cards. So I'm going to use black is for Lucius, and then the white beige deck is for Seamus. So to start with, I'm going to draw my 6 cards. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, just to show you an example hand, I've drawn 6 cards. Lucius's crew has Arcane Reservoir, which means they actually get a 7th card. This is a front of card ability, so I gain a 7th card. If I'm unhappy with my hand, I can spend a Soul Stone, which is a limited resource, to draw 2 more cards and cycle through it. In this case, I'm not going to. Seamus has the same opportunity, and then we will go to initiative. At this point, we both flip a card, and in this case, I get a 12 and I get an 8. In this case, the Lucius player will get the opportunity to decide who goes first. The Seamus player could choose to cheat this card if it's an important interaction, but we're not going to do that just now. As you can see as well, the Seamus player has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 models, including Bete Noire, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Lucius, which means the crew will also generate a pass token. At the start of the turn, because Lucius has an ability called Planning Ahead, the first thing I get to do is drop a scheme marker anywhere within 12. So from my Lucius, who is my leader, I'm going to drop it over here. Jumping straight into the interesting mechanics of this, because a scheme marker has been dropped within 6 of the Investigator gets used on the case and push a friendly model within line of sight up to the marker up to 3 inches towards it. So in this case, I'm going to use the Investigator to push it up to 3 inches towards it. This is now going into the first interaction of the game. So in this case, we're going to activate Lucius first. He's going to use his bonus action called Issue Command. What this is it starts at stat 6 and it requires a TN of 10. That means it needs a 4 to go off. The idea here is I'm trying to get a very simple mask. Now, because I'm a leader, I get to potentially soulstone this if I want to, but I've got to declare this beforehand. I'm just going to flip it, and I'm going to target Agent 46 with this ability to give him an upgrade. So I flip my card, I get a 3. Unfortunately, this is a fail, which means I do need to cheat in a card. At this point, I'm going to use my 4 of Rams. This allows the action to be successful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a non-bonus action with Agent 46, which is to focus, and I will demonstrate focus by using little white dice, so he has 1 focus, and then he gets to attach a Legalese upgrade. This is a hidden upgrade, which can be added to multiple models that are in the crew. Attach above the law. This is a double-sided upgrade where when I meet a certain condition at the start of Agent 46 activation, I will get to resolve a fixed ability. So that's my bonus action. And at this point, I've still got 3 AP with Lucius because Lucius is a master. Now, my first action, I'm going to use Subpoena. This is a stat 6 with a built-in mask against willpower, and I'm going to use this to target an enemy model. Now, Subpoena has a special wording which says I can draw line of sight from any friendly or elite mimic model. So I could go from Agent 46 and attack the Dead Dandy. I could go to Madame Sibel. I can't hit Seamus, but I could if I go through the Investigator. And then there is a couple of models back here that are out of range, but I could also use the Doppelganger or directly to use Bête Noire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack Bête Noire. Bête Noire is Terrifying 11. A Terrifying test means that before I can attack, I must complete a willpower duel. So I would take the Lucius' willpower of 7, and I need to get to 11, which means I need a 4. So what I'm going to do now is flip and see that I've passed. The suits and all of this mean nothing. It just means I'm not petrified enough to not attack. From here now, I'm going to declare my action, which is 6 against willpower. So I'm flip my attack. I get an 18 with a mask, and I've already got a mask built in. And for Bête Noire, I get willpower 5 plus 7, so I'm on 12. So 18 to 12 would currently be a straight flip. Both players have an opportunity to cheat now, with the defender being the one that cheats first in this case because they have the lower total. Because I don't want to be hit on a straight where it can be cheated, I'm going to use a 9 of tomes to go to 14. This now means that because of the difference, I'm going to be flipping a negative. So I'll flip 1 card and add a second for the damage flip. At this point, Bête Noire, before we go to damage flips, is going to declare that she is going to use the fade away trigger to reduce damage and bury. And Lucius will declare the built-in summons trigger, which isn't going to matter because he's not actually going to have the model there. So there is no triggers to declare, but it is important to note that these are declared before you go to the damage flip. It's a pet peeve of mine. So I'm going to do a negative damage flip. In this case, I'm going to flip 2 cards. I get 2 severes. So I look at the damage track and I go 2, 3, 3. Because it's severe, it's going to be 3 damage. Because of Bête Noire's trigger, she is going to actually reduce that damage by 2 and bury. So she ends up only taking 1 wound, going to 6. Because she buries, she comes off the board and goes to the side. At this point, I'm then going to try and subpoena on the Dead Dandy. Now, the difficulty of the Dead Dandy here is that in actual fact, he has an ability called Manipulative. This is an annoyance because basically, until he's activated, he's on a negative attack. So this would mean that I would flip 2 cards and have to pick the lowest. To get around this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend an action, my second AP, to focus, which will give me a positive to cancel out the negative. So I end up only flipping 1 card. So I'm going to flip a card to do subpoena again, 6 against the willpower. So this time I get 17. The Dead Dandy of willpower 4 also gets 17. Again, defensive suits in this case don't matter, there's no triggers on the ability. So this means that I would now have the opportunity to cheat, as would the defender first, because it's a draw in this case. Not going to happen. We're pretty happy with both these results. So, because it is a draw, that would mean that I would flip a card normally, flip 2 extra cards for drawing and pick the lowest, but because the Dead Dandy has an ability called Hard to Wound, I flip a 4th card. Please be aware that you can never flip more than 4 cards on a duel, and the positives and negatives with a focus would cancel each other out. So, because of my focus, I would actually take this card back. So I'm going to flip 3 cards, and I'm going to do some damage to the Dead Dandy. In this case, I'm going to flip my cards over, and you can see that I've got a weak, a moderate, and a severe. Because I've got one of each, and it's a negative flip, we always take the lowest card, in which case it's a ram. So that means that I am going to be doing 2 damage to the dead dandy, leaving him on 3 wounds. I would then have an opportunity to resolve any end of turn effects that are for the end of that activation for Lucius. In this case, there is none. Seamus is going to go now as the first activation for the Resurrectionists. Be aware that he's been given an upgrade called the Whisper. This means that as part of the start of his activation, he can use intuition and look at the top 3 cards in the model's fate deck and put them back in any order. This is really important for a master when you want to be super efficient with their actions. So I'm going to flip over my 3 cards, and you can see that I have a 4, a 3 and a 2. Not much use to anyone in those places, but nonetheless, we know they're there. I could rearrange these into any order, and that becomes more apparent later. For this case, I'm just going to put the 4 on top, because I'm not overly fussed. For my first action, I'm going to do something called Urban Legend. This would give an aura effect, which means that from him until the end of the turn, he has an effect that impacts on other people. This requires a 5 to do. So as my first AP, I'm going to do this. So I get a 4, which is unfortunate, which means I do need to actually cheat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat in this 9 of crows. This means that this aura effect has now gone off. That's my first AP. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to go for some combat. Because I can see that Seamus' movement 5 and his bladed bouquet has an attack of 1, this means that I effectively can move 6 inches to make an attack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move up 5 inches, so I have different measuring widgets for different sizes, and make sure that I end within 1 of the investigator. At this point, I'm now going to get to make an attack. With this, I'm going to use my bladed bouquet. And against the investigator, it has an ability called Flexible Morality. Again, abilities on the front of the card can trigger at different points. And this is after an enemy model targets this model in action, so it must either discard a card or be on a negative to its duel. Now, because I don't want to be on a negative, I could have focused beforehand. But as Seamus is my master and I have a Soul Stone cache, I can use a Soul Stone to put me onto a strain. Because I've got some fairly good cards, I don't want to use them. So with this, Seamus is now going to attack 6 against his defence, having spent a Soul Stone. So he is currently, as we are aware, on 9. The investigator, who has defence 5, ends up on 7. Because the investigator is losing, he is going to cheat in a card. Now, because we want to make sure that we are still alive at the end of this turn, what we are going to do is cheat in a 7 of rams. This would take our new duel total to 12, which means that currently Seamus is missing. But Seamus doesn't want to miss, and will use a card from his hand. At this point, he is going to use the 10 of crows. This is an important card for Seamus, because it takes him to 16, to 12, which is still a negative, but it does hit, and allows him to declare the trigger Amputation. So, at this point, before I do my damage flip, I'm going to declare that as the attacker, Seamus is going to do Amputation, which is once per activation, drop a marker into base contact with the target that will be dropped when the target is killed. The investigator is living, so he will drop a corpse marker, which we'll do in a second. This now means that I get to do a damage flip onto the investigator, which will be 2, 3, 4 and distracted 1. So because of the difference, it'll just be a negative flip. And as we know, that would be 2 damage to the investigator, and it also gains distracted 1. Distracted is the opposite of focus. So it means that you're constantly on that negative to be able to do something. So the investigator would be 6 wounds. He is now down to 4. Has a distracted, which we'll use as pink markers, and you can get tokens and everything else to do it. And also, we'll drop a corpse in base contact. Seamus now has 1 AP left and his bonus. What Seamus is going to do is he's going to actually focus this turn, which means that he now gets a little white dice, but he's going to spend it immediately, so I'm not going to put it next to him. And what he's going to do is he's going to do his bonus action, take by the hand. Now, what he's going to do is he's going to use that focus to get round that negative ability. And he's going to use 6 against willpower. This has a TN, which means not only do I have to beat the opponent, I also have to hit the TN. So, Seamus is going to flip the red Joker. The Investigator is flipping a 6, which is an 11. The red Joker is an interesting card, because obviously, against an opponent, if it is flipped, you cannot cheat. So even if I had a very good card in my hand, I would not be able to do anything from it. It also allows Seamus to basically choose any trigger, which in this case will be the execute trigger as the only trigger on the card. So, as he declares the trigger, Lucius's crew will discard a 1 from his deck. Now I'm just going to remember now, before the internet haters go crazy, because of Urban Legend and the Distracted, the Investigator would actually take another point of damage. At this point, because of the difference, because there's no damage flip, it doesn't matter. I just get to resolve the action and ability. Now, because of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the model 3 inches, staying in the engagement of Seamus. What this does is it allows this model to take another action called Why Hello Love. And I'm going to just push over to here a little bit myself as well, just to give myself some positioning. To be clear, I haven't used right behind you at this current moment in time, and I didn't need to focus. Excellent work, Oz. So I get a free attack, and now, because there are no animals other than the type within 3 of this model, which I can check, there is no one within 3, I get a positive to this flip. So, that will cancel out the negative from the Investigator, so Seamus will attack with his Bladed Bouquet again, this time getting a 7. The Investigator's 12. I would really like this to go off. So in actual fact, I'm going to go to 17. At this point, the Investigator has a tough choice. Does it want to use one of its high cards, or is it going to accept its fate? For the purpose of this, it's going to just accept its fate. As you can see by the tome card, there is no triggers. So that means another negative flip of 2, 3, 4 and distracted 1. I have a weak card, which is 2, so that means the Investigator goes down to 1, and then because of Urban Legend, in actual fact, another point of damage means that the Investigator would actually die. So as he's living, he drops a corpse. With that, Seamus's activation is complete. Panic is now set out for the Lucius player, and what we're going to do is we're going to activate the Doppelganger, who from a previous turn gained a Legalese upgrade. And the rule for Legalese upgrade is that as long as a model starts within 3 inches of a scheme marker, it can remove that scheme marker and resolve an effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this scheme marker and allow myself to push towards another marker. As part of that, I also get to draw a card, which I will add to my control hand. As a result of this, I'm going to push 5 towards a marker, and this now has flipped my Legalese upgrade, which is important for models in a future turn. With this, it is now time for the Doppelganger to go, and there are some really interesting things here that we can do, but we need to take control of the central marker, and this can be done in multiple ways, mainly by walking up and interacting. To do that, we have to be within an inch of the marker itself, but what we want to do is actually cause some chaos, potentially. So with this, what's going to happen is the Doppelganger is going to use their bonus action Mimic. And what they're going to do is they're going to target Agent 46 and try and copy their ability Twirling Blades. To do this, I just need a 5, which I'll now flip. There we go, it's a 1, it doesn't go off. Conveniently though, that 9 I drew just a minute ago is going to allow me, I'm going to use the other 9, to make that action go off. This now means that until the end of the turn, Doppelganger has Agent 46's attack. Doppelganger is stat 6, so she can move 6 inches, and she's just going to move up to here to take an attack on Seamus. Mimic is an interesting ability because you gain the stat of the action you're doing. Because that means that she's now stat 7 against his defense. Seamus in this version, however, is not terrifying. So, I get to attack, stat 7 against defense. So this means that I'm currently on 16 with a crow, and then the Seamus player is on 4 plus defense of 6, so we're on 10. So I currently have 16 to 10. This would be a straight flip. At this point, we're going to say we let that go. With the 9 of crows, however, this does mean that we can declare execute, which again means they have to declare a card, discard a card, or a soul stone to make the attack, the model not die automatically. So unfortunately, I am going to be discarding this 11 because I'd end up potentially discarding it anyway. I could use this to put pressure on my opponent, but for the sake of argument, I'm going to just keep showing how these different interactions work. Because it's now on a straight flip, but it is a master or a henchman that we're attacking, that master or henchman could use a soul stone to put me back onto a negative, to flip me an extra less card. But we're not going to take that. We're just going to take the straight damage. So it's 2, 4, 5. Because it's a straight damage, we can see it's currently 2. That is an awful amount of damage to do to a master. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat in this 13 of tomes to do 5 damage to Seamus. This would put Seamus down to 8 wounds. But before we get there, another use of soul stones is that you can soul stone prevent. This is only for, again, for masters, henchmen, or models that have the attuned ability on the front. What we're going to do is we're going to spend one of his soul stones and reduce the damage incoming. We reduce it by 1, so we still take 4, putting us on 9 wounds remaining. This is the first attack from the doppelganger. Moving into the second attack, we're going to do the exact same thing again. So, the doppelganger flips an 8, and Seamus flips an 18. We get the opportunity to cheat, and what we're going to do is we're going to play in the 13 of masks. By playing the 13 of masks, we do go to 20, and this gives us the ability to declare the cruelty trigger, which is once per turn, which means we get to attack again. So, again, negative flip. Nothing we can do about that. We could soulstone prevent and soulstone to put on an egg, but we're just going to take it and take 2 damage. So that puts us down to 7. Now, because of the cruelty trigger, Doppelganger gets to take another attack. But to be clear, an attack generated from a trigger does not generate any suits for the purpose of that attack. So I can't declare cruelty, crit strike, execute, or draw out secrets again. But I can get to attack. So stat 7 against defense. I'm on 9 to 12. So the attacker is losing. At this point, I'm going to try and make it hit by going to 15. I'm down to 1 card left. Seamus is on 12. And I really don't want to be hit. So I'm going to cheat in my last card from my hand and go to 18, meaning that the attack is missed. And that will be the end of Doppelganger's activation. It's time to get sneaky. And for Seamus' next activation, he is actually going to activate Bête Noire. Now, Bête Noire is currently buried off the table. To unbury her, we need to use a special ability, which is her bonus action, Rise Again. From this, we get to pick a corpse marker, unbury, and take the charge action. Now, this is a bit of a sad act, but nonetheless, because both of these models here are disguised, meaning that we cannot take the attack action when charging them. We can, however, describe the totem at the back here. So what we're going to do is we're going to unbury and then charge the scribe. To be clear, as this is our bonus action, this does not take an action. Now, with this, there is flexible morality, which is after anyone targets this model with an attack action, must either discard a card or be on a negative, which would mean that Bête Noire would be on a negative. But if we go and look at Bête Noire's paired knives, she's got 6 and a pos, which means that she naturally would get a positive flip to her ability. So that means that normally, against any other normal opponent, she would get to flip 2 cards and pick the highest. But in this case, she only gets to flip 1. So, in this case, the attack is a 14 of rams, which would allow us to declare crit strike, versus a lowly 10, which means it's going to be a negative flip. And here again, we can start compounding the damage onto this model by actually declaring crit strike, which means we're going to be +1 damage. This takes our damage track from 2, 3, 4 to 3, 4, 5. At this point, we'll declare and flip that damage. So let's get these cards out of the way. And we see that we would do 2 damage, which actually becomes 3, leaving us with 2 wounds. Now, at this point, we could attack again, or we could use a focus and try and get through this. Because we have no cards in hand, in actual fact, for our first actual AP, because our bonus was a charge action, we're going to focus and then attack again, giving us our 2 cards because of the flexible morality thing. So here, again, we flip with the Bête Noire taking 14 to the Scribe's 9, 8. 14 to 8. That is a straight flip on damage, which means we could technically cheat it if we had cards. But what we do actually get is the trigger slow. Slow means you get 1 less AP, which means that our Scribe here, who would have 2 actions normally, just gets 1 and their bonus action. As it's a straight flip, we're going to flip the damage. Minimum is going to kill him, so as long as we don't see the Black Joker, we should be fine. And unfortunately, we flip the Black Joker. This means that, in actual fact, 0 damage has been inflicted on the Scribe. And it doesn't matter if I flip multiple cards, like with the 10 as well. That means it's just going to be the Black Joker always takes precedent. In the rare event that you get the Black Joker and the Red Joker, the Black Joker still takes precedent. So we've done no damage. We've done another activation, but we have almost killed the Scribe, and he is now slow. It's now the turn of the Lucius player. And with this, we're going to go with Agent 46. And we have to remember from earlier that because we flipped an upgrade, that Agent 46 will gain fast, which is obviously the opposite to slow. It means he gets an extra activation. So 2 AP becomes 3 AP with his bonus. Really useful. He is also going to use his Legalese upgrade to remove this scheme marker, to draw 2 cards, which is case a 7 or a 4, and discard one of them, which is going to be the one that is left in our hand. From this, we're now going to see, is Agent 46 in range? He is. So for his first action, he is going to interact with this marker. This now means at the end of the turn, it would currently be considered under their control. With his 2 left AP, he is going to continue to help kill Seamus. So he is going to also charge. And on this, he's going to use his focus to attack, meaning he's going to flip 2 cards on the attack and add an extra positive to the damage. So going with Agent 46, we can see that we get an 11 plus 6, so 17, and against an 11. 17 and 11 is a difference of 6, which would be a straight flip. But because of that focus, it becomes a positive. This means we get to flip 2 cards and pick the highest. So we could do 2, 4, or 5 damage. Again, because of the ram, we can declare crit strike, which means we're going to have 3, 5, 6. And again, because this is a positive flip overall or a straight, we can cheat this if needed. So we flip our cards, and we can see that in actual fact we get a moderate, which is 4 damage, goes up to 5. This would leave Seamus on 2 wounds. For his second action, we're going to try it again, but this time with no positives. So, Agent 46 flips a 12, and in this case, currently, Seamus has flipped 16. This means that the attack is going to miss, because we only have a 7 and a 4 in our hand. Seamus has lived to fight another day currently. It is now time for the Seamus player, and my god, is Seamus hurting. What we're going to do though is we're going to try and help contest this middle by actually going with our dead dandy. In this case, all he's going to do is he's going to walk 5 up to the marker to be within an inch of it, and then he is going to interact. Because there is a draw on the score, this would mean that no one scores at the end of this turn. We could also check for his bonus action, which only has a range of 3, so nothing is in range. So unfortunately, in this case, he will not get his bonus. It is now the Lucius player's turn, but they are being activated because Seamus was able to kill the investigator before it activated. At the moment, the Lucius player has the scribe, who is badly hurt and slow, and a pass token versus the 3 unactivated models of Seamus. Because of this, the Lucius player will discard this pass token to pass the activation, and the Seamus player will get to pick another model to activate. In this case, we are going to go with the Dead Doxy. The Dead Doxy is a really cool model because it has similar abilities and actions to Seamus with his Take by the Hand. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to move the Dead Doxy up, and we are going to try and use Take by the Hand, targeting Agent 46 to try and move him around. Because remember, when we move models around, what we can do is get a free attack with Seamus. It won't trigger the ability to get positives because of having another model within 3. So for this, obviously, she's going to flip. She needs at least a 6, and we've got an 11, puts us on 16, versus Agent 46, who unfortunately has beaten her with 19. That means that the attack is not going to go off. This means for a second AP, what she's going to do is she's just going to charge. She's just going to move up, because charging a disguised model is pointless. But we have a cunning plan, which we will reveal shortly. With no pass tokens left, the Lucius player must now go with the scribe as its activated model. The scribe is, however, slow, which does make it a slight bit more difficult. Being worried about the status of Agent 46, potentially we can try and move and do our bonus action of I've got your back, which will place the model out of engagement. What we're going to do instead is we're going to be crazy, and what we're going to do is we're just going to move around, staying in the engagement of Bet Noir. If we want to leave, we would have to use something called a disengage action. And we're going to do our Elite Decree, which needs a 5 to go off, targeting Agent 46. This will attach another Legalese upgrade. So we need a 5 for this to go off. It goes off on a 5. Because there is no triggers, it just attaches the Legalese upgrade. And that is the scribe's activation because he is slow. And here now we are ready for the all money play that we're going to enjoy with Seamus. Now, what we're going to do is have an interesting time using Madame Sibel as our key target for model here. The reason being, in this case, is that Madame Sibel has a ability called Beckoning Call, which is move the target it's moved towards a friendly model in its line of sight. And what we're going to try and do here is lure Agent 46 into Seamus's aura so that he will then take further damage. But what we're going to do first is make sure that we end the move within 6. So in actual fact, our first action is going to be to move. We're going to move up towards the marker. And then we're going to target Agent 46 with Beckoning Call. At this point, we get a 12, which is the minimum requirement for our TN. And the Agent 46 gets a 10. This means that the action is going to go off. We could cheat, but at this point we want to show you some cool interactions with Agent 46, Urban Legend and Madame Sibel, just because this is where the game gets funny and janky and we can work out interesting elements to the game. So this goes off. It would technically also be on a negative because of Scarlet Temptation, so this 10 here that we'd flip would actually be unable to be picked. This is because of Scarlet Temptation from the Doxy. We will remember all the rules. It's hard playing both sides. At this point, we get to move the target towards a friendly model in its line of sight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this model towards Seamus. Now, because this model has been moved by Seamus. Sibel has a brilliant ability on the front of her card called Bump in the Night, which is that after a model ends its move, not in its activation, it gets to gain a distracted. That distracted becomes damage because of Urban Legend. That puts the model down to 8 wounds, and it gains distracted. Because it's ended in engagement range of Sebastian, he gets to use his Bladed Bouquet. Because of having a doppelganger nearby, he doesn't get the positive, but he does, however, get to declare triggers because it's not off an action, it's not off a trigger. So currently we have 7 and we have the red Joker. So this means that the attack action would fail. It couldn't be cheated even if we have a card. Now, interestingly, just to show how this can be really funny and entertaining, is that in actual fact, let's say that this attack hits. So I'm going to use a card that is of lower value and not cheat it. So I'm going to go for a 4. And let's say, for example, that in actual fact, I flipped a mask instead. So we are now rigging the deck for this final bit to show you some cool interactions in this game. So I'm going to just use the 9 of masks here. This has the bloody display trigger, which means that any models within 4 of this model must each pass a TM14 willpower draw or be pushed 4 inches away from this model. So in actual fact, being a bit more clever with our placement, if we go here, we can be a bit more controlled. So what we're going to do is make a damage flip. This would be on a negative, declaring the trigger. So this would then mean that Agent 46 would take 2 damage, another distracted. So another distracted would mean another ping of 1 damage. So he would take 3 wounds, putting him down to 5. At this point, he would now need to take a willpower draw, and that would be on a negative because of Scarlet Temptation. So he would need at least an 8 across both these cards or be pushed up to 4 inches away. Unfortunately, that is a 6 as the lowest card, so that would mean that in actual fact he fails and would be pushed away. As long as he ends that engagement with the model, Madame Sibel's thing would trigger, which would gain another distracted, which puts him up to distracted 3, would ping him for another point of damage. So he's now down to, I think it's 4 wounds. And as long as he is engaged, I would get another attack. And there we go. So 5 to black. So again, black Joker flipped, cannot cheat. Doesn't matter that I have this 7 and this 10 in my hand that would allow me to stop it. Unfortunately, it's still going through. So that would be 11. That is a negative flip. And here we have another 2 weeks. That would be another 2 damage. Puts him down to 2. And then another distracted, which would put him up to 4 distracted, which means the next 4 attacks he makes will be on a negative. And then, because of gaining distracted, he goes down to 1 health. We can do Madame Sibel's bonus action, but at this point, there is not really much point because of her it being near to the end of the turn. As the Lucius player has no more models to activate, it means that we just have the White Rabbit Company from the Seamus crew to go. All models get to activate, so it doesn't matter if you've got 2 or 3 activations left at the end, it still carries on and moves forward. At this point, I would like to point out that we have a very fun ability on White Rabbit Company, which is the exact same Beckoning Call. I'm always going to use this to try and kill Agent 46. So, I'm going to Beckoning Call, it's within 12, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip a card. I flip my card, I get the 19, and then again, because of models in Scarlet Temptation Aura, there is actually a negative to this. So although I flip a 10, which would put me on 16, I actually have to pick the 5, which puts me on 11 to 19. Now, if this was a damaging attack, obviously it would give me a straight flip, but it doesn't, and therefore all we're going to do is move towards, gain another distracted, and before even Seamus gets to take a swing, Agent 46 has died because of the distracted aura. Now, because of the upgrade, the Whisper, it is the staple on every master. After this model kills any model, it has, because it's using Urban Legend to kill them, it gets to draw a card, which means I now get a card in my hand to resolve any other actions. At this point, I'm just going to move up, and I'm going to give out an upgrade using Tailored Fit. Just needs a 5 to go off. Goes off on a 12 with the Visions of Glamour. Not that it matters, because there's no animals nearby. And this Tailored Fit upgrade allows me to discard it to reduce damage in a future activation. And with that, we've now shown you a demonstration turn on what can happen in a game of Malifaux. I know it looks quite complicated on the outset, but in actual fact, once you get into the swing of things and you learn the models in your crew, it becomes a very easy and straightforward process. In future videos, we'll obviously show things like schemes and strategies, so if they're available now, I'd check them out. As a final note, if you like all the tokens and things that you've seen in here to help you track your gaming, obviously our affiliate Rampage Games will help you with that there. As a final note, until next time, stay weird.